A lot of people keep their breath in their chest, and that keeps us in a state of fight or flight. Diaphragmatic breathing it's just incredibly calming. If you want to feel a certain way, you can use your breath to get there. So it also can be energizing. Breathwork is a remote control for your nervous system. So if you know, I want to feel right now, I'm tired, I want to feel more energized, or I'm a little edgy and I want to feel more focused and calm so I can get some work done, or I am really upset and I need to calm down. Whatever it is, however you want it to feel, you can choose a breath to help you get there. There are certain ways of breathing, if you've ever heard of holotropic breathing, where if you breathe this way, you can get into a state where your prefrontal cortex shuts down and your subconscious opens up, and all sorts of wild things can happen. Even just to pay attention to your breathing will help you improve it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Onion Soup. I'm excited to have our guest on today, Miss Candice Lazar. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Dexter. How are you?
Doing wonderful. I'm excited to dive into your work as a breathwork practitioner. And one thing that I find the most fascinating about it is that you got your start in law, and well, you did law before, so you're very used to the stress of everyday life that I'm sure goes along with law and things of that nature. How did you go from law over to breathwork, and what does that mean for you today?
It's funny. There's actually a lot in between. So it sounds like, oh, she was a lawyer, very stressed, and then went straight into breathwork. There was actually a lot of things that happened on the way between the two. So while I was practicing law, I discovered copywriting, and I had always been interested. Let me go back even further, truly. Before I started practicing law, I was a marketer. I've always loved marketing, and I studied communication in college. I was always kind of heading that direction anyway. I was a marketer, and then I moved. And when I moved, I decided to go to law school. Everyone in my family went to law school at some point. Many of them went later in life. So I thought, you know what, it's your turn. Everyone goes late. This is a good business degree to have. So I went to law school. And then while I was in law school, I thought, if you're studying this, you should try it and see if you like it. Really give this a go. So I practiced law for a little while, and I didn't love it. And I was already looking for a sort of a side hustle, a side thing to do. And one day, while I was doing some sort of researching something in my office, I was not within a legal database, but just on, standard internet, Google, whatever. And I saw an ad about learning to write copy. And I didn't know that you could become a copywriter and do that type of thing without having an advertising degree, without having gone to school and studied it and having a portfolio to go around with and so forth. So having discovered this other type of copywriting, direct response copywriting, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but you see it much more these days. And it's when people talk directly to their audiences. There's no middleman. There's no other person, right? If you have an email list, if you're emailing your people directly on your own behalf, that's direct response copy. And so I started learning that. I became a copywriter. I got back into marketing that way, kind of in this other way of this other realm, right? Online marketing and whatnot. And it was after that, eventually, that I became a breathwork practitioner. And I was working, well, this is such a long, let me stop so you can ask me another question, because this could become a really long, drawn out story. So yeah.
Diving into your work as well with breathwork, when you first got started and you mentioned doing the copywriting before, where did you start with breathwork? Because I know copywriting has a lot of levels to it, a lot of layers to it. My sister does a little bit of copywriting, and she also does work with grant proposals. And she oftentimes tells me that she does have to take a step back and do some deep breathing. And that actually led her to doing some work with heart math. And she's now a heart math practitioner. So I find it fascinating that you also went in a similar route to help people kind of calm their nervous system. So what did that look like? Was your nervous system something that needed to be relaxed and you're like, hey, I should do this for others?
Yeah, so yeah, that's actually kind of the next part, the next part of the story. So I really do. I still love writing, and I still, I view myself really as a marketer at heart. And but it can be very stressful. And I lived in a world that was very launch oriented. So you're really spending a lot of time preparing for, and then afterwards also doing postmortem on a launch, which is a very short period, but there's so much that goes into it. So something that might only last 5 days, a week and a half, you're spending months preparing for, and a lot depends on this. It's almost, if I'm thinking academics, it's like a final exam, right? It doesn't take long to take the test, but it's sure worth a lot. So yes, marketing can be stressful, copywriting can be stressful. And I was on vacation. I worked I was embedded in someone's team, a marketing team, as kind of leading their copy team. And I was on vacation. And when I went on vacation, the second I got there, I started feeling sick. And I spent literally 5 of 10 days. So the first half of a trip to Bali in bed. And that was where I discovered breathwork. I was doing a lot of meditation, and there was one breathwork one that I really liked a lot better than the other one. I just really liked the breath aspect. So I started researching it when I got back and diving into breathwork and seeing how a little bit of breathing and a little bit of tuning can make such a big difference in how you feel. I decided to become a practitioner to share it with people. And knowing that I had that background to be able to, try to do it online as opposed to just going one to one with people locally. It gave me a bigger megaphone, I guess.
I love it so much. Candice, when people talk about breath work and dive into the various aspects of pranayama, there seems to be just so much out there. There's so much information. Where do people start? Is it just deep breathing? Is it the box breathing? Do you hold for 30 and then relax? How do you get started with somebody?
I usually, so it, to get, on an individual basis, it really kind of depends on what they seem to need. On a training basis, if I'm teaching a group of people, I say, first of all, most of us are breathing wrong, day to day in our lives, and I too, I have to stop sometimes and think about how am I breathing right now, because it is such an automatic process, right? It is the only process in our body that is automatic, but that we also can choose to control. So it's something that we think we don't think about. We think we don't need to worry about because it's happening all the time anyway. But most people are not breathing ideally. And if you saw me move, I just sat up a little bit straight. I've gotten like in lotus position in my chair because our posture is not great, because we're not sending our breath all the way down. A lot of people, they keep their breath in their chest, and that keeps us in a state of fight or flight. That is going to help us, feel more stressed, feel ready to literally, attack something or run from it. And these are responses that we humans have had for thousands of years, and they were extremely useful when we had to fight or run from animals in the wild. It's less useful when now we're talking about attacking your email, right? Having a tough conversation with someone, something like that. But we still react to it the same way. So things like sending our breath deeper makes a huge difference. And most people have no idea. What I explain to people, the few things I tell them right off the bat are, first of all, nasal breathing all the time, as much as possible. And I know that it's not possible for everyone all the time. Sometimes you have a cold, maybe you have a deviated septum, you've got nasal issues, but to the extent possible, if you can train yourself into nasal breathing, it is so much healthier for you. And the second thing that I like to tell people a lot is, as far as sending that breath further down, if you pay attention to just thinking about breathing for a minute and not moving your shoulders at all, then that's going to improve your breathing, because it's going to force you to really bring that breath deeper. And if you think about, if you have kids or if you have animals at home, if you watch, I'm sorry, I shouldn't even say kids, if you have babies or animals at home. They both breathe like how we want to be breathing as adults, but we lose that along the way. The way we breathed as babies, we don't tend to breathe that way.
It's so interesting you bring that up because that's actually one of the things that when I started my journey, I noticed is my dog naturally breathes through his diaphragm. And I was watching my niece back when she was a baby, and she was naturally breathing into her diaphragm. And, when they're sleeping, you see the baby's stomachs expand. But as adults, as you said, we just breathe directly into our chest. How do you think that changes over time?
Well, part of it, especially I think for for this is a broad statement, but for women, especially in certain cultures, a lot of people try to suck in, right? Look good, suck it in. So we start to lose and even as kids, we don't, it's not necessarily that we're being told that, but we are absorbing that message culturally often. And so a lot of people start sucking it in if they're paying attention. Otherwise, along the way, if they're not willfully stopping, it's just honestly that life starts to become a little bit more stressful and our nervous systems tend to get used to that. We're used to operating at a different level. And so we don't know. And we've gotten, we're not the frog in the boiling water. The water's not boiling yet, but we're the frog in the water, not necessarily knowing, right, that it's turning up a little bit. And we just kind of lose that on the way. And the more that we get used to being stressed, then the more we get used to breathing incorrectly, and we're used to it. Our bodies adapt to it, and it's not ideal. A lot of things can change in your body from it. There's actually been studies about if you were to plug your nose for extended durations, how the shape of your face can change from mouth breathing and all the health problems it can cause. But we get used to it. Our nervous systems get used to being in that heat up state.
Diving into that nervous system aspect, what are some of those studies talking about, and what exactly are some of the benefits to full diaphragm breathing or full yogic breath?
Open your mind and expand your consciousness. Welcome to Chakra Wonders, where style meets soul. Designed to uplift your energy and inspire your path to higher awareness. Every piece is a reflection of the cosmos and the power within you. Explore our collection and discover what resonates with your soul. Visit chakrawonders.com and step into conscious living. Chakra Wonders, conscious style for a conscious world.
Well, diaphragmatic breathing it's just incredibly calming. And I want to point out as well, though, really breathwork, period, I view it as a remote control for your system. So if you want to feel a certain way, you can use your breath to get there. So it also can be energizing. Most people think of it as relaxing, and it is great for relaxation, especially diaphragmatic or yogic breathing. But really, breath work is a remote control for your nervous system. So if you know, I want to feel right now, I'm tired, I want to feel more energized, or I'm a little edgy and I want to feel more focused and calm so I can get some work done, or I am really upset and I need to calm down. Whatever it is, however you want it to feel, you can choose a breath to help you get there. As far as why diaphragmatic breathing is so good for you, it's so relaxing because it brings in if you've ever heard of the vagus nerve, which is basically a huge network of nerves that starts in your head, goes all the way into your stomach, that's not even that's not the scientific terminology, but it's a huge neural network that runs the huge length for your entire torso. And breathing into your diaphragm brings in your your vagus nerve. And breathing into your diaphragm, probably you're going to be doing it through your nose in order to get there properly. Because if you take a deep breath in your mouth, it's just probably not going to go. So if you're breathing deeply into your diaphragm, then you're also slowing yourself down a little bit, right? And then you can start to bring in, if you want to, depending on how attentive you want to be, how much time you have, you can start to bring in other things like noticing the feeling of the air, right? Presence, spending a little bit more sensory attention on it if you can. And if you can't, then that's okay too. I tell people that I do breath work most in the car, you know, because I find driving in Miami very stressful. So I do breath work at a red light. It's not like a huge, deep, like life-changing thing. It's like I'm going to chill for a minute and I'm going to feel better when the light turns again.
And I think you make a very important distinction because when I first got started, I did the same thing. I thought that I always had to sit down for 30, 40 minutes meditation in order to get the benefits of breath work. And exactly like you said, oftentimes I'm in the car and I do a few deep breathing practices, a few deep breathing exercises. You're talking about how you're able to, at some point, start feeling more of the sensory aspects of breath work. What exactly do you mean by that? What are some of the sensory details that go along, and how does that deepen your feeling, your relationship to the nervous system?
Yeah, I would say if it's something that you want to bring in more senses to, then you can actually set a timer for a few minutes if you want and focus on just breathing and paying attention to the things going on with you while you're breathing, noticing how the air feels coming in, noticing it going out, um, being aware with your other senses as well. If there's other stuff that's happening around you that if it's distracting you, bringing your attention back. It's a form of meditation, but it's got more of I view breath work, I guess, as meditation with a goal, but it's sort of just training your attention on something. So it's deciding, okay, for the next few minutes, I'm going to breathe and I'm going to notice how the air feels. I'm going to notice the temperature of the air feeling different. I'm going to really pay attention to feeling that expansion down here, whatever it is that you want to train your attention to.
Mm. It's so funny to me how often the vagus nerve comes up on the show. Like,
Ah,
there's the different practices that we talk about with the different guests. Everybody brings up the vagus nerve. So I really want to highlight the importance of what this nerve is and the difference between nasal breathing and breathing through your mouth as far as the relaxation to calming your entire nervous system.
when I think about the vagus nerve, I tend to show people often if I'm talking in a group, this one slide that basically shows the person on a ladder. And you can't tell which way they're going. If they're going up, they're going down. You're at any given point, you are on this ladder in the day, right? Anytime in the day. Right now, you're on the ladder. The question is, where on the ladder are you? And if you want to calm yourself and come down the ladder, then you do certain types of breathing, which often, as a good general guideline, would be extended exhales. So making your exhale longer than your inhale. Oftentimes, too, you on the exhale, if you feel more comfortable, you can do it through the mouth. A lot of people find it to be very relaxing to inhale through the nose and then exhale like through slightly pursed lips like this, or even just, like, and that even, I don't know that if you could hear me because most of these programs don't tend to, but that was even a little bit more force than you would normally use. Like on an exhale, it's just quiet. It's just natural. But yeah, often trying to actually time out a specific, whether it's like a double length exhale or specific times, there's a very popular relaxing technique is an inhale for 4, a hold for 7, an exhale for 8. So sometimes it's time, sometimes it's different, but just an overall general principle, if you want to calm yourself down, is to lengthen your exhale. Conversely, if you want to climb that ladder, if it's after lunch, if you're feeling a little bit tired, a little bit just flop, you're digesting, all the blood's going into your stomach and you need a pick me up and you want to go up the ladder, then you can do a completely different type of breathing technique that's going to wake you up and it's going to put you into a little bit of fight or flight. And you want to do that in a controlled way. It's not where you're not trying to make yourself passed out. You're not like, but it's like for a minute or two to decide to do some controlled breathing where you're taking in a bit more oxygen. Maybe your inhales are a little bit longer than your exhales. Often mouth breathing here is actually really good in these cases because we're trying to, again, create a little bit of fight or flight. So yeah, by tuning your length of your inhale compared to your exhale, you can either dial your energy up or down, and you can move yourself up or down that ladder of polyvagal theory. I hope that makes
It's
sense.
such an important, it does. It is such an important distinction because when you're talking about the fight or flight, I think that really paints a picture as to why people are usually in that elevated state. Because most people have that shortness of breath, whether or not they realize it, which is why in meditation and pranayama, we focus on slowing it down. But sometimes you do need that jolt of energy. You do need to push past that. So it's just as important to talk about the other side of that coin as well. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Sure. Well, it's very counterintuitive because a lot of people, they think, you'll say to someone, if you're trying to tell them to relax, take a deep breath. And what do people do instead? They go, and they take a big breath. And what happens is, they're not sending it down. Think about the air that you're taking in has to have a place to go, right? Your organs are having to like make space for this air. And so as your organs inside are shifting around to make space for the air, it's going to check your heart rate up a little bit because it's got to work to do this. So when you think this is relaxing, it's really not. It's actually bringing up your heart rate. So it's not what we're used to. We think a deep breath is relaxing. It should be, but it's because we're not doing it properly to make it relaxing.
Exactly. And to your point, when we talk about balance and control, you can't truly have balance if you only practice one side of the equation. You have to be able to work onto both sides and understand what's happening from both aspects. So when you have somebody perhaps who comes to you who's typically in the fight or flight or oftentimes hyperventilates and maybe they have anxiety, how do you, if at all, get them to realize that what you're doing can be controlled? Because a lot of times people who are having anxiety or having panic attacks, they don't know how to bring themselves down that sharply. And being able to slowly exhale is almost scary.
So I work in a few different ways. And as far as if someone having panic attacks, that probably is someone I would want to work with specifically one-to-one and, ask them a few questions and figure out what other tools in terms of coaching and coaching techniques to use. Most of my teaching that is, I have a membership that has a lot of breathing techniques in it. That's like, how do you want to feel? Come explore these. So it's very self-directed. There is also a component where people can reach out and ask me as far as, what type of thing they should do. And then in live context, people ask me an individual question here or there. But I guess this is all a very lengthy way of saying I don't have a specific thing I would say to if someone's like a hyperventilate a lot and I'm not sure what to do. I kind of would want to find out a little bit about like why are they hyperventilating? Does it seem like it's purely physical? Does it seem like there's a different aspect to it? But I will say that even people with disordered breathing, people who tend to hyperventilate, people who have asthma or a lot of nasal issues, they still can learn to slow down, to breathe better, to send it down. And when I say learn to do it better, I mean measurably, right? Like if you're actually taking time, scoring, how long can I do this for? How long can I do that for? What was it like a few weeks ago? And people will tell you that when they follow certain protocols of doing these things, that it does make a difference in how they feel. So while I would say it depends on the person and the situation, I would say that someone who's hyperventilating, who is freaked out about it, is not beyond help. It's something that can be worked with.
Ooh, I think that's important because you're talking about how breath work in and of itself is not a one size fits all. And oftentimes you might have to go through and work on a little bit of trauma and see what happened in your early life, if anything at all, to really start to relax yourself and put yourself into a place that you feel comfortable. Would that be accurate at all?
It depends. That is, for some people, yes. For some people, yes. And obviously, as far as trauma processing, that's therapy is very good for that, right? There's coaching and then there's therapy. I am not a therapist. I am a coach. So for some people, yes. However, there are also, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the concept of somatic healing, but there are things that you can do sometimes that cause thematic healing seemingly spontaneously, right? There are certain ways of breathing, let's say, if you've ever heard of holotropic breathing, where if you breathe this way, you can get into a state where your prefrontal cortex shuts down and your subconscious opens up, and all sorts of wild things can happen. You feel like you're just like, you're tripping. It's crazy. What's going on in my brain? You can feel things in your body. You can feel things in your brain. And you can have experiences and heal things that you didn't even really know were issues, that you might not have even known were there, that were bothering you before. So there are cases where you can have deep healing, not expecting it, not necessarily even having anything that you're specifically trying to heal from, but you still can have that experience through breathing. For some people, though, yeah, I mean, some people, there are trauma in life, and they would want the help of a therapist. And breathwork could absolutely help in tandem with that. But sometimes there is no substitute